So yesterday we were discussing about replication controller. So today we'll try to understand about replica set and other Kubernetes controllers. As we already know, we should not create a pods directly. We have to create pods with the help of controllers. So we already created a pods using replication controller. We can scale up, scale down the pods, and pods will be managed by replication controller. And we have another Kubernetes object called replica set. Replica set. And what is difference between replica set and replication controller? Okay. Both are same. It's next generation of replication controller. Replica set also will create pods and it will manage pod life cycle. It will manage pod life cycle. We can scale up and scale down replicas in replica set. Same thing. But only difference comes in its selector support. Only difference comes in its selector support. In replication controller, selector is not mandatory. And RC supports only equality based selector. Equality based selector. So RC supports only equality based selector, whereas RS supports equality and also set based selector. So if you see, we created a replica set yesterday. Sorry, we created a replication controller yesterday. And while creating a replication controller, this was not mandatory. if you see, we created a replication controller yesterday, and here the selector is not mandatory while creating a replication controller. So this is something like this. We are going to give a selector that is not mandatory and it is optional. And even though we give, it supports only equality based selector. Selector here, whatever labels you have given for a pod, right? Whatever labels you have given for a pod, this is your selector here. So this is not mandatory, and even though you give, it is equality based selector. What is equality? What is the meaning of equality here? And what is set? Equality is key and value. So equality in the sense key equals to value. So what is set? What is set? Set based selector, like in, not in, like expressions. Set based, basically expressions. In, not in, right? Multiple values. If I want to compare with multiple values, key same, value only one value. I can compare with key equals to value. Here in, something like key in, just to give an example, like value 1, value 2, something like this. Key not in, like SQL, in SQL you have multiple, like equality, it is like this. Where name equals to something like this. Equal key value. This is like where name in, something like this. Except these two, something like this. So this is replication controller supports only equality based selector, whereas replica set supports both equality as well as set based selector. So that is the only difference. Except this, everything remains same. Okay. So let me show that. I will create a replica set for another application. Maybe let it be this. For another image or another application or another service, I am going to create a replica set. Let's see. So again, same API version, kind, metadata, As per the given table, what is the API version for replica set? It's the next generation of replication controller. So as per the given table, what is the API version for replica set? It's apps slash v1. It's app slash v1 metadata name for your replica set. I am trying to give, guys, please be on mute, and someone is just drawing something on the screen. Please don't click on the screen whatever I'm sharing. If you see, let me stop and share it again. So name Maven something, your replica set name. Guys, if I want to create this replica set in a specific namespace, I can give a namespace here. Suppose if I give this, right, this replica set, and whatever pods we are going to define for this replica set will be created in this namespace. If I want to create this replica set and its pods in a specific namespace, I can provide a namespace name here. Spec. Here again, replicas. If I don't provide number of replicas, it will create one replica. If I don't provide also, it will create one replica. This is a replica set. Now, here, template, your pod template. Your pod information. Labels for your pod. You can give whatever key and value you want to give, something like this. App, Maven, web app, something like this. Spec, your pod specification. Pod will have a containers. Image, from which image I want, from this image. Something like this. Now, if you see, here I have not given selector. I mean to say, in the specification, I can define in any order. In the under specification, I have not defined selector. It will not allow me to create. If you want to check, right, let's kubectl apply -f. Now what it is saying? What is the error? So missing required field selector. Selector is mandatory while creating a replica set. Selector is mandatory while creating a replica set. So I have not given a selector. So that's why it is giving error. Order doesn't matter. It has to be under spec. It has to be under spec. You can define selector first or template first. Right? I can define something like this. Selector. Again, here it supports two types of selectors, right? Equality, something like this. Match labels. If I have to define equality based selector, match labels, key and value. Match labels, this one, key and value. If you have to use expressions, set based, you can use this one, match expressions. Match expressions. It will take something like this. Key, operator, values, multiple values. If you have like match, right, you can give something like this. This is match expression, multiple values if you want to match something like this. So it is just supporting, which doesn't mean we have to use this one. Match expressions. In, not in, something like this. So this is set based selector. It will support set based selector. And this is equality based selector. But if we see replication controller, in the replication controller, we have given just something like this. Under spec, we have given something like this. Selector, key and value, that's it. But whereas here in RS, replica set, we have given something like this. Match labels. This is equality. Match labels, key, value. So this is the only difference between replica set and replication controller. So let me just give this. Now before creating this, let me see kubectl get rs. Rs in the sense replica set. I don't have any replica sets in this namespace, but I have one replication controller. If you want to see all the objects in this namespace, you can see in this namespace, I have two services, one replication controller and 4 pods. These 3 pods are managed by which one? These 3 pods are managed by which one? This replication controller. This replication controller. Which replication controller? This one. And this is managed by which one? If you see, there is no controller for this. What is this? This pod. This pod is basically a static pod which we created yesterday. This is managed by kubelet. Kubelet, which is managed by kubelet. So now I am trying to create a replica set. So let's create a replica set. So now I am getting this. And this is managed by which one now? If you see, there is a replica set. There is a replica set. Who is managing this pod and its life cycle? This controller, basically replica set. So this replica set is managing this. So what is this? Desired one, current one, ready one. How many replicas you are expecting, and how many replicas are available, and how many are ready. So I have a replica set. This replica set is managing this pod. Now how can I access this pod, guys? How can I access this pod, the application which is running in this one, inside the cluster or outside the cluster? If I want to access this one, what I needs to be done? So what is required? Basically, we need to create a service. We need to create a service. So do I need to create YML in another? Do I need to create an object in another YML, or can I use in same YML? Can I define multiple Kubernetes objects? In same YML, can I define multiple Kubernetes objects, or I need to write each object in a separate YML? Can I use define in same YML? Yes, we can define in same YML. How can I separate the object? Basically, the definition using 3 dashes. So here I can say something like this: API version. Now you tell me, guys, for the service, what is the API version? V1. And the kind. What kind of object I want to create now? Service. Metadata. Name. Service name, you can give Maven, web app, something like this. Spec. What are the properties under spec for a service? What are the properties under spec for service? What needs to be done here under spec? Labels will not come here. Like selector, we will use selector. So spec what type of service. Now directly I will use node port. I want to access from outside as well. Then ports, port mapping, port, your service port, and you have a target port, and optionally you can give a node port. These are the ports. Port, service port, you can default it to 80. Since it's a web application, you can default it to 80. And target port, what is my target port? What is my target port? Basically this container port. And node port, I can optionally define a node port. So what is the node port range in Kubernetes? 30,000 to 32,000. 30,000 to 32,767. Within that range, you can give some port. If I don't give also, optionally it will assign within that range. Or if I want to assign, I can assign something like this. If this is not already in use, I can use this one. If I don't give also, randomly it will assign within that range. If I don't give also, that is fine. This one. If I want to give, I can give, otherwise optionally you can leave it. This is service. Now, before applying service, if you see, this is also one of the node, right? This is also one of the node. If you see, this is also one of the node. Already for one node port, if you see, there is a port opened in this node. This is processed by kubeproxy. This port will be opened in each and every node, guys, not only in the master node. If I go to another node, worker node, if I go to another node, worker node, this is also node, right? So here also that port, will be listening. That port will be opened in another node also, like net stat not found. So net stat is not there. Let me install sudo apt install net tools. If you see now, this node, if you see one of the node port, this is one of the node port, right? kubectl get svc. So for this service, we of node port, this is the port. So this port is listening in each and every node, and whenever we access using this server IP and this port, kubeproxy will process. Kubeproxy will route the traffic to that application. Now similarly, I am creating a node port service for another application. Now if you see, now service got created, which means in the background, let me see the port, this one, 32520. Now if I see, so 3 2 this one, if you see, so there is already node port open 32520, and again kubeproxy will process that request. It will route the traffic to appropriate application. So in the background, kubeproxy is doing the work. We are creating a service so that ports will be opened and its rules will be maintained by kubeproxy. Its routing rules, network rules will be maintained by kubeproxy. Now when I access using this port, using any of the server, any of these nodes, Kubernetes nodes, like this one, this one, this one, on that port, the request will be routed to that 32520. And within that, I have an application, maven-web-app, or application, the application context. So maven-web-application. Let's see what is that. So I think I have missed. I have missed selector. I have not given a selector. So that's why it is not able to route the traffic. So let me give selector. I have not given a selector, right? So what is my selector here? This, whatever pod label, whatever pod label. Now it will be able to route the traffic. Let me apply. Now our service will have a endpoints. Our service will have a endpoint. This service will have a endpoint. It is pointing to this pod. So maven-web-app, the application context, basically whatever name you copied, your var file name, right? If you see, when I am accessing using this port, request is going to one application. When I am access using another service, request is going to different application. So pod name, pod label can be same, but pod name we are just nowhere it is using internally. Pod name also you can give, pod label also same. It will not give any issue. But pod names we are not using in the selector. We are using labels in the selector. So this is replica set. I created a replica set. Again, I have only one replica. I have only one replica. If required, I can scale up. How to scale kubectl? Scale. Now what I need to scale? If I want to scale this pod, what I need to scale? I need to scale RS replica set. What is my replica set name? This is my replica set name. Hyphen replicas, something like this. Now if you see, I am getting one more pod. Now my service will have how many endpoints once this is ready? So how service is able to identify this? How service is able to identify this? There is another what? Based on what? Based on this selector label and selector. Now there are two endpoints. If I scale it to 3, if I scale up to 3, my service will have, once that third replica is ready, once this third replica is ready, my service will have 3 endpoints. Once the once that is completely ready, it is still coming up. It is not completely up. It is not coming up. If you want to see what is the problem, what command I can execute? Can I execute kubectl logs now? Something like this on this one. If I execute kubectl logs, it will display the logs, but container itself is not created. What logs you will get? I don't have a container created. If the container is created, then only you will get the logs. Now container itself is not there. So what I can do? kubectl describe pod, that pod name. So I think by this time it is started. Here it is not reflecting, but when we describe, it is showing pulling is successful, created container and started the container. So since our machines are having very less configuration, so it is not trying to update the current status. So try to scale down. It will not, because our machines are having very less configuration. Let me scale down. Let me scale down. First, I will scale down some other applications. Then we will scale up. So we have very less system resources. So let me scale this one. Then I will try to scale up this one. kubectl scale RC. I will scale down this one. Hyphen replicas 1. Now I am trying to scale down. This. Then I will scale up. Since I have very less configuration servers, guys, you cannot create multiple applications. You cannot deploy multiple applications. If you have a very high configuration servers, then you can deploy. So it will take some time. Now master machine itself is not able to get the current status from the workers, because workers are running out of CPU and memory. Workers are running out of CPU and memory. Kubelet is not properly responding. Kubelet, which is running in the workers, is not properly responding the current status. So it will take some time. Now, if required, I can scale up this one. This Maven Web App RS. Now you can see it is saying as a terminating, but it's already been terminated. If you see, we have only one replica, one endpoint for this one. If I describe Java Web App, Java Web App RS, SVC also, I can see only one endpoint. This parts has been already terminating, but it is taking some time to reflect here. Now let me scale this to 2. So now if you see here, right, now we have 2 replicas for that Maven Web App service, 2 endpoints. So this will be corrected after some time. It is already terminated, but it will remove after some time. Okay. So don't try to schedule too many pods. Don't try to create too many pods if you have just created 1 GB T2.micro worker machines. So this is replica set. We can scale up, scale down. Now there is another object called a daemon set. Guys, in Docker, there are two types of services. What are those? In Docker, there are two types of services. What are those? Replica mode and global mode. So in global mode, what will happen in Docker if I create a service of type global? What will happen if I create a service of type global in a Docker swarm? Container will be created in each and every active node, and we cannot scale up the global service. Similarly here we can create a daemon set. So daemon set. Daemon set make sure that all or some of the Kubernetes nodes run a copy of pod. Here it's a copy of pod. So again, same concept. When I add a new node to the cluster, what will happen to the daemon sets? When I add any new node to the Kubernetes cluster, what will happen to the daemon set pods? Do I need to do anything? Or automatically, all the daemon set pods will be created in the new node? If I add any new node to the Kubernetes cluster, if I have a 10 daemon sets in my Kubernetes cluster, the pods for all those daemon sets will be created in the new machine. So whenever a new node is added, a pod will be adding to that new node also, and whenever node is removed, and the pod also garbage collected. So again, daemon set something like this. So let me show something like this. If you see, this is how we have written replica set. And if I come to the daemon set, exactly something like this. Instead of replica set, we are going to use daemon set. This one. But in daemon set, can I define this? In daemon set, this side, can I define this? Will it allow me to define a replicas? So this is replica set, and this is daemon set, right? So here it will not allow me to define a replicas. So you can give something like this, some name, daemon set, something like this, daemon set. So now it will create a pod in all the nodes, in all the nodes, and we cannot scale up, scale down these daemon sets. So let me delete all the no, these objects kubectl, because I don't have enough space, right? Let me delete kubectl, delete rc. I am deleting a rc, this replication controller, and I am deleting rs, the replica set. So it is getting terminated. It is getting terminated. So these are getting terminated. Now this is also terminated, but it is still showing as a terminating, but it is already terminated. So now let me create the daemon set. Let me create a daemon set. Now, since I am using same label, do I need to create again service? Since service is already there and I am using same label, whatever I have referred as in selector, do I need to again do anything in the service? Not required, right? And I have not deleted a service. So let me create a daemon set kubectl apply -f. Now if you see kubectl get ds, there is a daemon set. Kubectl get nodes. I think there is only one node. Other node went down, I think. If you see, this node went down. That's why it is not working. So why this node went down? 142. What is that 142 server? This worker 2. Why this node went down? Because when we scaled a lot of pods, right? The kubelet might have down. The kubelet service might be down. Let's see now. Sudo system kubelet status. If you see, already this server is not responding properly. So there is a typo. There is a heavy load on this one earlier. So and it is not responding properly. Let's wait. So it is not responding properly. What I can do, at least now we don't have a pods. Let me reboot this system. Just reboot this system. If you see, it is not responding. Let's stop it. Or if you want to really deploy more application, what I can do in AWS now, AWS concept. Now I start the server. Can I change the instance type? If I want to really deploy a lot of applications. Now I can change the instance type if required, and I can start the server. So let's wait. If you want to really deploy more application, you can change the instance type. Now one server is not ready. So the kubelet is not responding to the master. This is my master machine, and kubelet is not responding. This server, kubelet is not responding. So that's why this is marked as not ready. And when I create a daemon set, only it has deployed in one node, in this node. If you want to change instance type, you can change instance type. Once it is completely stopped, it is not completely stopped, it is taking some time. Now let me start. I am not changing the instance type. So if I stop and start the service, the kubelet will be rebooted, kubelet will be restarted. And if kubelet is running properly, again master machine will try to reach the kubelet and it will report the correct status. So let's wait for some time. Now if I go here in the master, now this is ready. Now this is ready. Yes, we can restart. I tried that one, but was my server was responding? I was just trying to check the status. The status itself is it is not responding. My server was not responding. So I no need to restart the server. I can just restart the service itself. The way I have checked the status, I can just execute restart. So now, if you see, this is back again. Let me go to master. My node is back. Now I have one daemon set. Now do you see that once this node is ready, automatically the daemon set is created, the pod is created for this daemon set. Now, what type of applications we will deploy as a daemon set? Now you can see this is ready and it has getting the proper status from that kubelet. It has getting the proper status from that kubelet. So what type of applications we will deploy in a daemon set? Like as we already discussed in the Docker, like log aggregation softwares, monitoring softwares, right? So some kind of a application or software which you want to run in each and every node, some kind of an application or software which you want to run in each and every node, like Prometheus node exporter, right? If you are using log aggregation like EFK, so you can deploy the log aggregation agent softwares. Like if you are using Splunk, Splunk forwarder, Splunk agents, right? So which you want to run each and every node, agent softwares, like monitoring agents, log agents. So those kind of a softwares, we can deploy it as a daemon set. Now our applications, we will be deploying as a which controller. Now we discussed pod, we discussed RC, we discussed RS, we discussed DS. So our applications, like whatever applications we are developing, the end user applications, as a which object we can deploy, which one we will use? Can I use RC, RS, or is there any other object which I can use? There is another Kubernetes object called deployment. There is another Kubernetes object called deployment. So we can use deployment also. But why? Why deployment? What is the problem with RS or RC? Anyhow, definitely pods, we cannot use pods directly. We cannot use pods directly. We should not use, because if pod goes down, it will not be recreated. If pod goes down, it will not be recreated. So we can go for a RC and RS. But why deployment? Why deployment is recommended? We can use RC and RS, there is no problem, but deployment is the recommended way. It is not, I can create auto scaling for RC and RS also. I can create a auto scaling for RC and RS also, that is not a problem. I can create auto scaling for RC and RS. So what is the advantage with the deployment is basically we can update our application images. We can update the application version. We can roll out and we can roll back basically. We can roll out a change in your application, and if something goes wrong, you can roll back the change. We can update our application versions, and also it supports some deployment strategies. Recreate, rolling update, deployment strategies. Like I can use some deployment strategies so that I can deploy without downtime. Now, deployment is the recommended way. It is not mandatory, but it is a recommended way because of its features. In Kubernetes, deployment is the recommended way to deploy a pod or basically replica set. If I create a deployment, it will create a replica set and it pod because of the features it comes with. We can update our pod specification. We can roll back to older deployment version. We can scale up, scale down. So if there is change in our image, right, we can update that in a deployment. Now let me use replica set, or let me use replica set. Now let me deploy a replica set. I have a replica set. Now I created a replica set. Now I created a replica set, right? Now if there is a change in the image, if there is a change in the image, I want to deploy the latest image. How can I deploy now? If I use replica set. So this is my replica set. Describe RS. This is my replica set. This is my pod template. This is my pod template. So what version of image is being used? What version of image being used? What version of image being used as of now? The latest. Since I have not given, it will be like latest. Now I want to update my application image. Now I want to update my application image. If I use a replica set, replication controller, how can I do that? If I update my YML and apply, will it reflect? Will replica set will be, will it terminate the old pod and it will create a new pod with the latest version if I use replica set? Can I update the replica set? Let me show that. VA, Maven, web app RS. Now there is a change in the image. I am trying to update my image version, the latest code, something like this, version 1, version 2. Now if I apply -f, Maven, web app, RS. Now, do you see is that pod is getting updated with latest version? Like I mean to say the latest code. Is your pod updated with latest image? If I describe the pod, is it updated with that latest image? Do you see that version? If I use replica set, can I update the images for our application? I mean to say images, image versions of the pods. Is it updating the pod? So what needs to be done if I use replica set? What needs to be done? I need to delete replica set and again I need to create a replica set. Need to delete and again create a replica set. So if I use this approach, do I have a downtime? If I use this approach, do I have a downtime? Because you are deleting your replica set. So parts will be deleted. And again you are creating a replica set or replication controller. You will get a pod, but there will be a downtime. Now, instead of this replica set, if I go for a deployment, instead of this replica set, if I go for a deployment, what is the advantages? Again, if I create a deployment, deployment will create a replica set again. But whenever I am updating my deployment, it will create another version of replica set, and it will try to create a pods, the latest pods, and it will delete the old pods. So we are having some features or advantages when I go for a deployment. We can roll back to previous version, rollout, rolling update, recreate, those are deployment strategies. When we are updating the deployment also, we can achieve downtime deployments when I use a deployment object in Kubernetes. So let me show that now we will not use replica set directly. So let me delete everything. If I want to delete everything, I can use this one. All the objects will be deleted in the current namespace. So now instead of replica set, I am trying to create a deployment for our application. So let me create something like this. API version kind metadata spec. API version kind metadata spec. So what is the API version for deployment? It's app/v1 kind. What kind of Kubernetes object you want to create? What kind of Kubernetes object you want to create? Deployment. Metadata. Name. Name for your deployment, guys. I can give something like this. Something like this. This is your deployment name. Spec. Here, exactly as your replica set only. Replicas, how many replicas you need? 2 replicas, template, metadata, name, Java, web app. What is this name? This is your pod name. This is your deployment name. So here I can give a label, something like this. App. I can give something like this, guys, any key value pair. This is key, this is value. I can give something like this. Labels any key value pairs. So something like this I have given. Now, your pod information, your containers information. Containers, your container name, name of the container. Image, Docker hands-on / Java web app. So it will use this one as default. Ports, your container port. So this is my deployment object. There are two types of Ashib, this we already discussed. What hyphen represents in YML, guys? We discussed in Docker Compose while discussing in Docker Compose itself. array, list of objects, array, multiple. I can have another container, this one. Okay. So try to revise whatever we already discussed. So this is my deployment. Now deployment will have two types of strategies. Deployment has some strategies: recreate and rolling update. Deployment strategies: recreate and rolling update. So recreate and rolling update. These are the deployment strategy. When this deployment strategy comes into picture, when we are updating the deployment. When we are updating the deployment, this deployment strategy comes into picture. This is the default one. This is the default one. This is the default one. If I don't mention the deployment strategy, what is the default one? This one, rolling update. So what is deployment strategy? At what it will be doing, right? Suppose when I am updating the deployment, guys, I already created a deployment, some version of the image I used. So I already deployed one application with some image version, and there is a change in the code. There is a change in the code. So when I am trying to update my deployment with another image, the image version is got changed. What will happen based on the deployment strategy? There are two types of deployment strategy: rolling update and recreate. Suppose if I given a deployment strategy, this one, strategy type recreate. If I use this approach, what will happen? As per this diagram, what you can understand, if I use deployment strategy as recreate, do I have a downtime? I can update the deployment with the image version, but if I use my deployment strategy as recreate, as per this diagram, what can you understand? There will be a downtime. If I use deployment strategy as recreate when I update or when I roll back, if you see, there will be a downtime, guys. If I use deployment strategy as recreate, the name itself is saying recreate. So already some version of the image is using. There are some parts, some version of the image is being used and it is running. When I am updating the deployment, first what it is doing, when I use my deployment strategy as recreate, it is terminating the old, it is going to terminate the old parts. It is terminating the old parts, old version of your containers. Then what is happening? At some point of time, you don't have any containers. Then it is creating latest version of your pods or containers. If I use my deployment strategy as recreate, so we have a downtime. When we are updating the deployment, or basically when we are rolling back and rolling out, this deployment strategy will come into picture. Instead of recreate, if I use rolling update, instead of recreate, if I use rolling update, what will happen when I am updating the deployment? As per this diagram, is it deleting first old pod or old container which is serving your traffic. So first, what is happening? First, it is creating a new version of your container. Once this new version of container is ready, what is happening? Once this new version of container is ready, what is happening? It is terminating one of the old container. But still, request is handled by one of the old container and one new container. Then it will create another new container. Once this is also completely ready, then it will terminate this traffic. It will terminate this pod. So, zero downtime. When you are updating the deployment, still your application traffic will be handled by some pods. Zero downtime deployment. So if I have to achieve zero downtime deployment, what Kubernetes object I have to use? And what deployment strategy I have to use? So rolling deployment object with what strategy? Rolling update. If I use rolling update, deployment object, the object is deployment, the strategy is rolling update. So if I use rolling update, what will happen? Already some version of images pods are running. When I am updating my image version, when you are updating your image version, first it will create one latest pod without terminating the old pods. First it will create one latest pod. So while this is in progress, request will be handled by which pods? It is trying to create one latest pod. Request will be handled by which pods in this phase? Old pods. Once this is ready, it will terminate one old pod. In this phase, request will be handled by which pods? The traffic will be handled by which pod? One old pod and also one old pod as well as one new pod. Once this is done, it will try to create another latest pod. If this pod is also ready, then it will terminate this one. So now, without downtime, without downtime, we can update our applications. Without downtime, we can update our applications with the help of this Kubernetes deployment object with rolling update. So first let me demonstrate recreate. So if I use recreate, there will be a downtime. So I have to use something like this, type strategy type recreate. So if I don't use, what is the default one, guys? Again, this is very important. What are the deployment strategies in Kubernetes? What is recreate? What is rolling update? These are the common questions. What is the default strategy? If I don't mention, default one is rolling update. So which one we will use? That is based on your requirement. Kubernetes is providing all the features. So first let me finish this, then we will see what we have others. So let's fix the indentation problem. Guys, you try to create YMLs, don't copy paste the way I am creating, right? I can just copy paste from somewhere, but which I don't want to do. Try to write a Kubernetes manifest, because in the interviews they may ask you to write some sample manifest. Recently, for one of our student, in the interview, what they asked, they asked this guy to share the screen. Can you write a deployment manifest? Can you write a service manifest? Can you write a daemon set manifest? Right, in the interview, that is what happened, right? So if you keep writing whatever you are practicing, this manifest, it will be very easy, and you can understand what you are doing. If you just copy paste, you don't know what is the use of this. You don't know what is the use of this if you just copy paste. So try to create a YMLs. Even though I share the running notes, don't just copy paste. Try to type by looking at the running notes. Try to type so that at least you can understand what you are doing. So I'm trying to create a deployment object with the 2 replicas. Type as recreate. This deployment strategy will be applicable only when we are updating the deployment. So now I think I have deleted the service also. Yes. I have a service file I can apply. That is fine. Now, when we are creating this deployment object, the strategy will not be considered, guys. I don't have a deployment object as of now. A is missing. Okay. Line number 13, I have some issue. Number 13. Okay. Some hidden spaces will be there. Make sure you don't have any hidden spaces, tabs. 17, I have an issue. This is fine. We don't have any. 19. If you see, there are some hidden tabs. So now missing required field selector. Okay, I have not given selector. So let me give a selector. Again, this is going to create a replica set, guys. Again, this is going to create a replica set. You can use this. Invalid value. There is a typo again. The labels and selectors are not matching. The labels and selectors are not matching. Now deployment is created. If you see, we created a deployment. But who created this one? This replica set. we created a deployment, this one. So this is created by whom? This replica set. This deployment, right? This is what we created. Who created this replica set? As I told, deployment will create a replica set only. So this deployment created this replica set. And who is managing these parts now? If you see the naming, deployment, this is my deployment. Deployment name, hyphen some unique number, replica set. And if you see, replica set, hyphen some unique number. Now, I have a deployment. Deployment has created this replica set, and this replica set is managing this pods. Now, I can see the history. I can see the history, like I can see the status, whether deployment is successful or not. Something like this. My deployment name. Now deployment is successfully done. And if I want to see the history, I can see the history. History in the sense how many times we updated our history. So how many revisions are there as of now? Since I just created, how many revisions are there? How many versions are there for this deployment as of now? One version. Now, if I want to see more details about this version, hyphen revision 1. Now, what version of, so it is showing the pod template for this revision. It is showing the pod template for this version. So as of now, this revision is running. So what is the image version? This one, :latest. Now let me create a service for this. Let me create a service and let me access. I deleted the service, so that's why I recreated. My application is different one. So I have a deployment and I am able to access the application. Now, let's assume there is a change in the image. There is a change in the image. There is a change in the image. Now I am trying to update the image version. I am trying to update the image version. Now, instead of this version of the image, now I want to use this version 1 image, right? This one. Now, if you see when I update this, let me do this. Now I am trying to update my deployment. I'm trying to update my deployment. Here also I'm trying to connect to the master only. And I want to show what is going to happen in the background. Here also I'm connecting to master only, where I want to watch my pods. What is going to happen to my pods when we are updating the deployment. Now I updated my manifest file. Now, while I am updating the deployment, let's see what will happen in the background. Will I able to access my pods while updating the deployment? Now let me apply kubectl apply -f Java. Now if you see in the other tab, is it creating first? Do you see the downtime? Is it creating first latest pods and then terminating the old pods? Or first it has terminated the old pods and created the latest pods? And if you see, there is a downtime. And if you see, there is a downtime. First it has terminated old and I got a new pods. And there was a downtime when I am updating. Now if I see how many revisions will be there for my deployment, how many revisions are there? 2 revisions. Now if I see what is this replica set and what is this replica set and why this is 0 0 0, what is this replica set and why it is 0 0 0 and why this is 2 2 2, and what is this replica set? The old replica set, the old version of replica set. 0 0 0, because I updated the deployment, so I got a new replica set. And what is this replica set? New replica set. It is maintaining all the revisions. Now if you see, I have 2 revisions. Old revision pod template, latest revision pod template, latest revision pod template. Now if something goes wrong with your latest code, can I roll back to this revision? If something goes wrong with your latest code, latest image, can I roll back to this template, this revision? So even though I roll back, my deployment strategy is rolling, recreate. While rollback also, do I have a downtime if I want to roll back? Something like this, you can roll back. kubectl roll out undo deployment. If I want to undo my deployment, kubectl roll out undo deployment and your deployment name. If I don't mention to which revision I want to roll back, how many revisions it will go back? If I don't mention to which revision I have to go back, just one revision, right? Now if you see, I am rolling back. Now do you see again downtime while it is rolling back also? It is trying to go back to the previous version of the images. Now do you see downtime because of my deployment strategy? So this is how deployment with deployment strategy recreate works. So tomorrow we will see rolling update. What is rolling update and how to define a YML for that rolling update. And then we will see what is blue-green deployment. So tomorrow we'll continue, guys, with again deployment object. So once the deployment is done, we'll try to discuss about HPA, horizontal pod auto scaling. Pod auto scaling. How can we achieve the auto scaling of the pods? We'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll discuss about deployment. Once that is done, pod auto scaling. How can we scale the pods automatically? We'll continue tomorrow. based on the CPU and memory utilization on the pod. How can we scale up, scaled up? We'll continue tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. We'll continue tomorrow and try to practice whatever we are discussing. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.